Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers of happiness, joy, and a centered approach to success in life. Seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation, and we're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Hi, friends. Before we jump into this episode, Melissa and I would like to ask for a favor. We're trying to get to know our audience better so we can create better episodes just for you. We would really appreciate it if you could head over to theselfawarenessjourney.com/survey and answer a few quick questions for us. Thanks. It has been a while since I started a podcast with a dictionary definition, and I know you love it.
Oh, no. Welcome to the first 10 pods of the Self-Awareness Journey. Get the dictionary.
What does this word
All right.
mean? Okay.
What is this?
So the word I want to talk about is reframing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something like acidophilus.
Yeah, some really hard word.
Okay.
No. Okay, keep it
Okay.
to easy words.
Reframing.
Reframing. This
Oh,
does not mean
okay.
like moving a wall in your house. I guess
Oh,
that
got
could
it.
be
Okay,
considered
so no
reframing.
sheetrock.
No,
Got it.
this is not a
No
construction
sheetrock.
metaphor. But I found myself
Or
in
is
the
it?
past couple like weeks and even months spending a
Mhm.
lot of time reframing the way people are thinking about
Mm.
a situation.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's why I wanted to
Oh,
define the word reframing from a psychology perspective first, so then we
okay.
can talk
I
about
like it.
how reframing applies to
Oh,
us.
I don't know if I've ever done that as a coach.
Reframed
Just kidding.
something like your whole job.
Yes.
All right. So reframing, a process of reconceptualizing a problem by seeing it
Mm.
different from a different perspective. Altering the conceptual or emotional context of a problem often serves to alter perceptions of the problem's difficulty and to open up possibilities for solving it.
Oh, that is a huge sentence, a
Mm-hmm.
mouthful. Um, the phrase that I love that you said was altering the emotional context.
Mm-hmm.
I love
Yeah.
that. That's what I pulled out of that, even
In
though you
full
were reading it fast.
disclosure, I did get this from the American Psychological Association's Dictionary of Psychology. This is not
Aha.
this is not the Webster version of that word.
Reframing. Or the Urban Dictionary's version.
Yeah.
Okay, just, if we had more time, it would be fun to go there just to see, but we won't do that.
So
Or
the idea that you're
ChatGPT.
you're reconceptualizing something, and I like it from a
Yeah.
different perspective because
Mm,
so often we are obviously looking at the world through our lens and our view and our
always and
experience,
only.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is sometimes really helpful to see how someone else looks at the world,
Mm-hmm.
because often, again, they're looking at a different frame, and learning how
Mhm.
they're looking at the world is sometimes really, really helpful.
Mm. So, can I plus one your whole beginning
Mm.
part of how we
Mhm.
frame things and how come it's so important to have a reframer?
Yep.
Because usually when we are framing things in our own world through our own lens, we are using past experience and our
Mhm.
emotions behind the past experience to try to reframe what we want going forward.
Mhm.
So we use the exact same framework all the time, thinking we're doing something beneficial and not doing that because, oh,
Mhm.
now there's someone different in the picture, or now it's a different job, or it's a different circumstance. But if you're framing using the exact same lens, you are going to get the same outcome
Yep.
most of the time.
Mhm.
So I love this idea of reframing. How come you wanted to talk about it today?
Well, mostly because I found myself doing it a lot, to
Mm.
help folks get unstuck,
Mm.
and all over the place, not just at work, like at home, like
Yeah.
um,
Like, give me an
speci-
example.
So, Abby is on the middle school tennis team,
Mm-hmm.
and she
Yep.
had her
Your
first.
daughter. Yep.
Yep, she had her first match a couple days ago, and it's first match jitters, right? And she's all nervous
Sure.
about it,
Yeah.
but she's just going
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
and on. What if I can't serve? What if this? What if that? And she's getting
Mm,
all spun up about her tennis match.
mm,
And so I just stopped her and said, "Okay, Abby, all that could and can be true. Your serve
mm.
might be terrible. In fact, it's almost for sure going to be terrible." I didn't want to tell her
Mhm.
that
That good.
though.
Good on you for not adding that. Yeah. Well done. Good
but
parenting moment.
but the things that she was worried about, like, were likely going to happen, so they're not untrue.
Mm.
But she was
Oh,
putting
interesting.
so much
Ah.
anxiety around that I was like,
Hmm.
Abby, let's think about what the first tennis match maybe should be like. What would you want to get out of it? She's like,
Mm.
well, it's the first one and I haven't played in a while. And like, right, okay, so maybe your expectation of the first match should be, I'm just getting back out there. It's I'm happy that I made the team, right? That
Mm.
I'm back on the court. It's going to be a beautiful fall
Right.
day. Like, it's o- it's okay if I miss some of these shots. I'll learn from the miss hits. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it'll and give yourself a little bit of grace on the expectation of what your performance is going to be the first day in the first
Mm.
match. So
Yeah.
yeah, just a little
That's
bit
really
of
good.
different perspective, to
Yeah.
help her not not have so much anxiety. And in a sport like tennis, the number
Mm.
one performance killer is
Yeah.
anxiety.
Well, yeah, actually, you know what? I think you could say that for all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Like,
just a physical tennis or not
yeah,
physical sport,
life.
all sorts of things. Life. Yeah.
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 Yep. But in
This is
some of those
interesting.
sports,
So,
it really highlight in what the one thing I like about sport is that it really highlights um your physical performance and your mental state. Those things are
yeah.
so tied directly together.
Yeah.
And that's what I
And
think
your
is,
emotional state.
and your emotional state. Yep. That's what I think is
There.
interesting about sport. It's much more about like your emotional control than your physical ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there it is, the self-awareness journey right there packaged in a middle school girls
Mm-hmm.
tennis match.
Yep.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? So, so you mentioned that, and actually you said this a few days ago. You were talking about how you feel like you've been doing a lot of reframing lately. So, do you think it's because more people are asking you your opinion about things, or do you think it's more you're noticing this pattern of people thinking a certain way right now based on your own growth? Like, what do you think that's about?
Uh, let's see. I don't think people are asking me. I think I might be
You don't?
telling. No.
I don't know if I believe that.
Uh, no, I've been noticing, um, yeah, just a little bit more negative spin on things, a little
Me
bit
too.
more like, what if this
Mhm.
goes wrong? I'm not sure what's going to
Mm,
happen, more uncertainty. Um,
mhm.
and a lot of times that uncertainty will just lead to a negative thought pattern.
Mhm. Totally
And then
agree.
the thing that's always right next to this one is the expectations thing. People's
Uh-huh. Exactly.
expectations get a little bit um sideways or a little off target.
Mhm.
Then they feel like they're not meeting them. Then they frame a whole activity in a negative light, when in fact
Yep.
maybe only
Yep.
5% of it is negative and 95% of it is extraordinarily positive.
Yeah. So, which brings me back to what I was saying at the beginning of our pod. I totally agree. Um, the very first thing that I was talking about is people have expectations for themselves or outcomes
Mm-hmm.
based on past experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's seldom based on a clear openness to what is
Mm-hmm.
and what's possible. It's very seldom based on that. Like, even if we're trying to be optimistic, sometimes what we'll even do is throw so much expectation in there that we want something even more outlandish than probably what's possible, because there's this framing that's happening. This tell yourself this story. just tell yourself this story. It doesn't matter if it's right or not. It's kind of like my problem with the whole, uh, the self-development industry
Mm,
of fake it till you
right.
make it kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? It's that
Yep.
framing.
Hmm.
It's the framing of it.
So, um, you're talking about past
Hmm.
experiences. What
Yeah.
happens if we don't have really any experience with something?
Mm. Oh, that's interesting.
It's like a new
Yeah.
experience. We're gonna go do something new. It's a little bit of an adventure.
But don't you think even in that situation, people will still pull from their past experiences of being involved in something as of a new adventure without any experience? Don't you think
Probably,
people
yeah.
still do that? Like, I just think, because here's what I think happens. I think our brains are so busy trying to run stuff,
Hmm.
not based on logic or not, well, no, based on strictly logic, not based on human emotion or feelings
Yeah.
or what's possible. The brain's constantly, all the brain does is it's a comparison tool. That's all it is. So if you say, I'm in this new thing, like what if, what if, what if,
Hmm.
the brain goes, okay, what is the last time we did that we were in what if? And what
Hmm.
happened? What could go wrong? Like, what's going to go wrong here? Okay, yeah, this could happen, but let's just try to prepare ourselves so we don't hurt our own feelings. Like, that's what I think happens. And it takes somebody with some clarity and some awareness to step in and say, whoa, hang on a minute. Can we just come back to, let's just reframe how you're processing all of this,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I was trying to think of like an example in my life where I would do something new but have no prior experience at it.
Yeah. Could you
Um,
think of any?
I've never been on a cruise, so my
Ah.
expectation of a cruise is that um, it's it's a Marriott on a boat. Is it that? I don't
Human soup. That's what I always think of that as.
know.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of people who love cruises. No disrespect
I'll have to go
intended.
on a cruise at some point,
Really?
just to
Do
find
you
out. No,
though?
probably not.
Well, I think, like, to make this a little more real instead of such a theoretical discussion right now, I think that in my coaching conversations, there are many times where, um, okay, like this week, I was working with a newer leader that their office had a lot of drama.
Hmm.
And this newer leader was inexperienced in how to navigate, not only for themselves,
Hmm.
but for the office, like
Hmm.
really inexperienced about that. However, they'd had a lot of experience with teams of people or groups of people being dramatic
Mm.
and not having each other's back. So there was an automatic fear that this outcome was going to be the same way. It's like, oh, here we are in a team environment with a bunch of people and they all have their own agendas and nobody's taking
Mhm.
care of each other. And no matter what I do, I'm going to look like the bad guy if I try to be different because that's what happened
Mhm.
before. So it's this expectation, like you're talking about, that creates this narrative about what they think is going to happen. And
Mm.
ultimately, usually the narrative you create in your mind is exactly what
Mhm.
happens.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If you go into that, if you emotionally attach to and fixate on that narrative, almost most assuredly it will happen. It's the
Mhm.
law of attraction,
Yep. So
right?
if we're in our own heads way too much most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Yeah.
and especially if we're trending towards the negative,
Yeah.
um, because a couple what I'm hearing like there's like the reframing you can do yourself, right? If you can be
Right.
self-aware enough to say, oh, this I'm thinking about this not in the right way, so let me try to
Mm-hmm.
reframe it. I think that's a
Yeah.
good exercise for you to do
Mm-hmm.
individually. Sometimes that's really
Yeah.
hard. Um,
I agree.
and so having someone else or sharing someone else's experience
Mm-hmm.
to help you think about a situation differently is super
Yeah.
helpful, like you
Yeah.
as a
I'm
coach.
Yeah, I really like that it's so funny that you just said that because I actually with my pen and I never take notes, but as you were talking, I wrote 2 things. And the 2 questions that I wrote were exactly what you just said.
Hmm.
You said I said, "Can we reframe ourselves?"
Hmm.
Like, can we do that? I think we should talk about that. And if so,
Yeah.
like, What are tactics that we could try? Like,
hmm
how do we know we need to be reframing? Like, how
Yep.
would we know, first of
Yep.
all?
How would we know?
Um,
Because
yeah,
we start feeling bad,
right?
and we feel
Triggered.
ourselves getting into like the shame spiral or the negative spiral.
Yep. So we have some sort of trigger that doesn't make us feel
Yep.
good, right?
Overthink if we're for me, if I'm
Mm,
overthinking a thing or I'm
mm.
spinning on a thing,
Ooh, that's a good one.
that's a sure sign.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So if you know you're a thinker and overthinker, and then you see that you're going there, yeah, that's like a key. Because is it hard to reframe ourselves, or is it just hard to recognize when we need to reframe ourselves?
I think it's the second one. I think it's hard to recognize when we need a reframe. I don't think it's
I do too.
if you sat
Right.
down and you wrote on a piece of paper like, I am upset because
Yes.
it's
Yep.
going to be cloudy tomorrow on like my wedding day, right?
Right.
And then you're like,
Yes.
well, can you control that? Not really. Like, do you want to let it ruin your
Right.
day? No. You
Right.
reframe it
Right.
like, uh, the
Yeah.
I know that photos are better when it's cloudy out than when it's really sunny. We will have
Yeah.
really
So
amazing
reframe it to the
we'll have
positive.
really amazing photos. Yeah,
Mm.
reframe it to the
Yeah.
positive. If you sit down
I
and do
see. I
that
really like
exercise
that.
yourself, you can
Yeah.
totally do it. The hard part is
Hmm.
recognizing when you need to reframe stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a real life example. It just happened 2 days ago. I was on the way to a board meeting,
hmm
and I have this new vehicle. Well, I have a new
hmm
vehicle. I have a new vehicle.
Now
And
everyone knows you have a new vehicle.
now everyone knows I have a new vehicle, which I'm not bragging. I don't like having new vehicles. There's so much stress involved. Okay. Anyway, one of the things I was concerning myself with this new vehicle is getting a windshield ding. I don't know
Hmm,
why. I just had
That's
that in my
weird.
mind.
Yeah.
It is weird. And so I'm on my way to a board meeting. And what do you suppose happened?
You
I got a
got,
huge
yep.
windshield
Hmm.
ding. Yeah, and it turned into like a bullseye right
hmm
away. Right above my vision, in the middle of my forehead is where it would be.
That sounds annoying.
Okay? Super annoying. Okay? So this happens. So here's the thought process that went through my head, because I'm very aware. I'm trying to be
hmm
very aware, right? And my first thought process was I brought that to myself
Mm.
because I was fixated on something was
Yeah.
going to happen, and it was
Yep.
likely going to be the windshield.
Yep.
I really didn't know I was fixating on it, but I remember thinking that more than once. Okay.
Way
So I
to
put it out there.
attract a rock to your face.
I am such a strong manifester. Look out. Okay. But here's how I reframed it. This is how I reframed it. I just immediately got in the parking lot. Okay, fine. I only had 1 minute to get into the board meeting. After the meeting, I came out and I called to get it all sorted out. And they
hmm
said, well, it's going to be like 2 weeks
Mm.
because, your windshield has all of these sensors, blah, blah, blah,
hmm
blah, blah, and we can't get it done right away. And so I had two choices. I could have gotten real mad about it, and I could have fixated on the energy of how it felt that I had manifested this
hmm
ding in my windshield. But I purposefully reframed it. So this is what I started to do. And this sounds goofy. I sound like a crazy person, but I really did do this. I looked at that and I thought, what a great location.
Hmm.
It's right where I will see it.
hmm
It's not right in my view, so it's not like dangerous,
hmm
but it is in such a good spot because it can remind me of how strong of a manifester that I am.
Mm.
And I love how it will be fixed. It's going to be fixed, and now I won't have to worry about it anymore because I've
Uh-huh.
already done that.
hmm
So I did. I went through the whole process of this is what happened. I'm 99.9% sure I brought that to myself. Now, some people are like, okay, Melissa, there is such a thing. Well, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But then I equally knew I had the power and I had the interest
hmm
to feel good no matter what.
hmm
I chose to feel good no matter what. So I was able to reframe it myself. And I don't feel bad now, even though it's still there and I'll
Yeah.
have it for a couple weeks. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Could have been
Yeah.
so much worse,
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's an example of
that is a really good
seeing
example.
something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here's my second question.
Okay.
So I said, can we reframe ourselves? And, we talked about little ways to do that. You said, like, if you notice you've been triggered, or I said triggered, you said, if you notice you're overly thinking about something, like, so everybody knows their own processes or they wouldn't be listening to this podcast.
hmm
So here's the other question. How do you know when to engage others in helping you reframe. Isn't that
Probably,
interesting?
yeah. I mean, it might be this similar, right? Like if when you start noticing, um,
Hmm.
but often, it's hard to ask for help.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
hard to say
Yeah.
like, oh, um, I'm really stuck on something. Usually, it comes off as just complaining to other people, right?
Mm,
If I
mm,
need something
hmm.
reframed, doesn't look
Yeah.
like, "Hey, Melissa, I've been really worried about this thing upcoming, and I'm really negative about it, and I was wondering if you could help me see it in a different way." Wouldn't that be awesome? Usually comes
That would
out
definitely give you a nice layup.
like
It'd be a nice
this,
layup for the
right?
person.
Yeah. Usually comes off with like, you know, everything at work is horrible and the sky is falling and everyone's a jerk and none of this is my fault and complain, complain,
Right.
complain.
Mm.
Um,
So are
so
you suggesting that you might not know you need some help reframing?
Oh, you for
Or
sure
you're
don't know.
worried about
Well, first, it's fun
hmm,
to complain about stuff, so why would I want to reframe my favorite activity?
that's a lie. It's
Well,
definitely not you. I know what you're saying.
you know what I'm saying? It is
Yeah.
there's part of the thing that reframing would hopefully do is make it so you don't really have
Mhm.
anything to complain about. You can't complain after you've reframed your windshield thing, you can't complain about your windshield anymore. Or you don't
Well,
feel
because there is
compelled
nothing to
to.
complain about.
Nothing to complain about.
There's
You've
nothing to
mitigated it.
right.
Um,
Yeah. Well,
so
if you've cleared your deck, if you've cleared your deck of
mhm,
that negative energy, those thoughts, those
yep,
emotions that are not helpful, there is no reason
yep,
to focus on that short end of the stick anymore.
yeah. So the question is, would you know or would you be willing to like go ask somebody for their
Mhm.
opinion of stuff, or do you just want to complain? Either's fine. I'm not judging the complaining one.
Well,
Like,
I
but
actually, though, wonder if there's something in addition to that. I don't think it's just those 2 options.
what's the third
I don't think
option?
it's just those 2 well, okay, so, like, first of all, I think the more self-aware we become, the less willing we are to engage other people in our deep internal
Mm,
processes
mhm,
because they don't know like you
mhm,
know, right? So I think there's that. So the less for me, I am not willing to engage in other people in places that I feel I'm still just kind of working on something.
mhm,
Um, however, uh, if I do this for a bit of time and I still have a stomach ache over it, that's the best way for me to
mm,
describe it.
mhm,
Then I know, okay, I'm stuck. I don't feel or I ask myself, would it just be better for me to go directly to the source of my discontent and
mm,
have a more honest conversation to release this stuff? Like, so I think I kind of like reached that point where I just say, I'm not able to reframe this internally. Maybe it's not meant to be reframed right now. Um, or if it is, I need some help reframing it because I
mhm,
just can't do that. So unfortunately, I wait until I'm in an extreme amount of pain before I'll do that, as you can attest, because I'll be spun up about something for a really long time before I'll admit it. But I think that's the whole challenge is
yep,
like, what if I came to you and I said, okay, this is what I'm really stressed out about, which I
mhm,
do. I'll
mhm.
come to you and say, this is what I'm really stressed out about. And you'll be like, yeah, we've been talking about that for 2 months, right? This is real.
Yeah. You make me sound so kind.
No, but it is what it is. It's just truth. Truth is my point. Truth is truth. And so sometimes if we simply cannot reframe ourselves to truth,
Mhm,
sometimes we need really trusted advisors. Not everybody. So this
mhm,
is what I'm saying I think is really important that if we decide that, you know what, I need somebody to help me reframe it,
mhm.
it has to be a trusted advisor.
Yep, I agree. You can't just go ask random people. Um, though the time when asking random people things,
Mhm.
works for me is, uh, especially like in a context where like, again, I don't really know what I'm doing. I
Yeah,
haven't had the
exactly.
experience, so I'm really,
Oh, yeah.
I become really open to asking other people what
Yeah.
their experience around a problem is, because they're likely
Mhm.
looking at it different than I am, and I can actually learn. Like I can use that as a
Yeah.
learning opportunity. How would you look at this situation? Like,
Mm.
here's what I got
I
going
like
on.
that.
How would you look at
Yeah.
this? And
Yeah. And
and
you do that. You've done that a lot of times in
some
new big things that you're
mhm,
trying to take on. You go
yeah.
to a completely different group of people and start asking
Mhm.
questions.
Yeah, go
And I
ask
like
someone
that too because
outside your core what they think of something, and you're probably gonna get a really, at least interesting answer or perspective.
well, especially someone who has more expertise than you, it's just like when you've talked about like sports, like
Mhm,
wanting to be the worst on the court
mhm,
because you're using someone else's expertise to learn. And I think that if we can be at that stage without the emotional investment made yet, that's the key.
mhm.
Is if you haven't convinced yourself that you know
Yeah,
and have all the emotions behind if you fail, you haven't done any of that, you're still really open. So being able to have someone reframe situations for you
mhm,
without that emotional energy, I think is so awesome, right? Because then you're
yep,
so open and you can take that into your whole bucket of
mhm,
experience to make decisions about how you think and feel about it.
yep. Let's switch to
Yeah,
my
it's super
other
interesting.
favorite pastime other than complaining, telling other people what to do.
We're going to tell
So
everybody to hang up from this pod and go start telling everybody how to reframe their life.
well, I I'm gonna joke with that, but it is
Tell-
fun to tell people what to do, right? Someone
no, it's
complain.
not.
Yes, it is. You like someone's complaining
No.
about something. Oh, you know what you should do? You know, go go do that. Go tell them off.
You can't. I can't be that way. I
Okay,
can't be that way in
well,
my
good. So instead of telling people what to do, another thing. I'm just joking. I'm just trying to like get you
I
all
know
riled
you
up.
are. No, you're yanking my chain.
Uh, Using this reframing technique for other people because we want to help other people. I think I
Yes.
genuinely
Yeah.
believe that most people want to help other people.
Agreed.
Um,
Hmm.
so a lot of times we go into this like someone's
Mm.
complaining or trying to solve through something, and so you tell them maybe what you would do or a course of action or you should
Hmm.
go do X, Y,
You
and
should.
Z. You
You should.
should. Yep.
Hmm. Yeah.
Using reframing to help them solve their own problem is actually
Oh,
really
yeah. That's
helpful. So
genius.
instead of saying you
Yeah.
should, you could say,
Hmm.
you might look at it this way, right?
Hmm.
You might
Exactly.
use reframing to like not be focused on the particular details of the
Right.
problem, back it up, put a nice big general frame around
Mhm.
it. And
Yeah.
you could say things like, well, in my experience, I looked at it this way.
I was just gonna say that and that's another great way is to use your own and just say, "Well, if it were me, it's not. It's not
Hmm.
me. But if it were, I guess here are some of the things I would be
Hmm.
wondering."
I've
Yeah.
even
Yep.
used it. Again, I guess I use this a lot in parenting. So
Mm.
when our middle Elliot has been working on some like t-shirt design stuff, which is awesome. Um,
Mhm.
but I will tell him things like, in my experience, I've done it this way. I've seen other
Mhm.
people go that way. You could think
Yeah.
about generally this other way,
Yes.
right? So I use it as like
Mm.
a way to say, hey, here are three different ways to look at that problem. Choose whichever
Options.
one is that you feel would suit you. But this is
Mm.
just what I've observed.
That's so good. Yeah, because there's no pass or fail. You're not making
Right.
a judgment in your observation.
Yep. And
You're just allowing.
especially with with kids,
Mhm.
there is a little bit of like my way or the highway, especially with like a child parent relationship.
Totally.
Even if it's
Mhm.
not super explicit, if they don't do the way
Yeah.
that you
Even under
suggest, well, they're either going to do exactly the opposite because they're kids,
right.
or if they don't do what you said, they're going to feel bad about it. So
Yes.
giving them
Yep.
a couple options and whichever one you choose is great.
Do you know
Is
what?
helpful.
It
What?
isn't just kids and parents. If people feel like you're a trusted
Hmm.
advisor, if you even if you think about who you go to for your trusted advisor, it's like there is you feel a level of responsibility to take the advice given.
Totally.
I think that's just human nature to be in partnership with people. And so I think that's why it's so important to think about it the way you're mentioning, is to have more of a openness and an options style rather than a you should style, and make the person feel bad or good in addition to how they're already feeling.
Yeah. So I think that's
really
if
good.
you're going to come alongside someone and help them reframe the way they're looking at things, maybe sharing not just your experience, but what you've observed other people doing is really helpful.
Yeah, I love it.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well. Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them.
We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring.